Hi, I'm Harper. When my fiancé ended our engagement 5 days before the wedding, my family didn't comfort me. Instead, my mother handed me a packed suitcase and said, "You've embarrassed us enough." They didn't cancel the celebration, they just gave my place to my cousin and pretended I never existed. But they forgot one crucial detail. Every contract, every payment, every single receipt had my name on it. And when they tried to erase me from my own story, I learned that sometimes the most powerful response isn't a scream, it's silence. Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. Sunday mornings in Millbrook, New Hampshire carried that specific New England quiet, the kind that made you feel like the world was holding its breath. I stood on the raised platform at Ivory and Lace Bridal, the late September sunlight streaming through the storefront windows, turning the dress shop into something almost holy. My hands trembled slightly, but not from nerves. This was joy, pure and simple. In 5 days, I'd marry Nathan. "You're absolutely glowing," my best friend Jenna said, circling me with her phone, capturing every angle. "Nathan's going to forget how to breathe when he sees you." I smiled, believing it, wanting to believe it. My mother, Patricia, stood near the three-way mirror, arms crossed, studying me, like I was a painting she wasn't quite satisfied with. Finally, she spoke, her voice carrying that familiar edge. "Well, at least one thing in this family won't be a disappointment." She stepped closer, tugging at the hem with unnecessary force. "Stand up straight, Harper. That dress cost more than most people's cars. Try to look like you deserve it." I bit the inside of my cheek, an old habit, and adjusted my posture. 34 years old, and I still felt 12 when she used that tone. But today wasn't about her. Today was about the future Nathan and I were building. Then my phone buzzed. It sat on the velvet bench beside the mirror screen, lighting up with Nathan's name. My heart did that little skip it always did. Probably something sweet, I thought. He'd been sending little countdown messages all week. I reached for it, careful not to snag the lace. One message, 5 words that shattered everything. "I can't do this. Sorry." The world didn't end with a bang. It ended with silence. My body understood before my mind did, freezing in place, like someone had pressed pause on my life. The dress suddenly felt too heavy, the lights too bright, the air too thin. "What is it?" Jenna's voice came from somewhere far away. I handed her the phone. Couldn't speak, couldn't move. She read it, her face, cycling through confusion, anger, disbelief. "This has to be a mistake. This is Harper. This isn't real." But I knew it was. My fingers moved mechanically, calling him. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. I typed with hands that felt disconnected from my body. "Please, just tell me why." No response. No typing bubbles. Nothing. My legs gave out. I sank onto the platform, the dress pooling around me, like spilled milk. Everything felt wrong. The whisper of tulle, the weight of the beading, the smell of new fabric, mixed with the lavender sachets the shop used. Patricia's sharp voice cut through the fog. "What now? Stop being dramatic." Jenna answered for me, her voice tight with fury. "Nathan just," he texted. "He's calling off the wedding." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Patricia's face went through a series of calculations I could read, like a map: embarrassment, anger, and finally, cold decision. "Get up," she said. "We're leaving." The ride home blurred into disconnected images. Jenna drove my car while I sat in the passenger seat, still in the dress, still holding my phone, like it might suddenly explain everything. The trees were just starting to turn dots of gold and red against the green. 5 days. We were supposed to be married in 5 days. That evening, I sat at my parents' kitchen table, still wearing the dress, because taking it off would make it real. The house smelled like pot roast and furniture polish, Sunday dinner scents that should have been comforting, but felt like a mockery. My father, Robert, hadn't moved from his recliner in the living room. The Patriots game droned on, punctuated by his occasional grunt at the screen. Like nothing had changed. Like his daughter's life hadn't just imploded. I cleared my throat. Patricia looked up from her tablet, impatience written in every line of her face. "Well," she said, like she'd been waiting for something. "He's not coming," I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from someone else. He sent a text. That's all. No explanation. She set down her tablet with deliberate precision. "So you ruined everything." I stared at her. "I didn't. I don't even know what happened." Patricia leaned back, a small, bitter smile playing at her lips. "You always were too needy." He probably realized he could do better before making a permanent mistake. The words hit like physical blows. She stood, pulled out her phone, and dialed. I heard her in the hallway. "Yes, the venue's still available. We'll discuss options." My hands found the small velvet box in my pocket, the cufflinks I'd bought Nathan as a wedding gift, engraved with our wedding date, October the 2nd, 5 days away. 2 hours later, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Patricia appeared with a black suitcase, my college suitcase, the one with the broken zipper I'd been meaning to fix for years. She set it by the kitchen door with the same care she'd use for taking out trash. "You need to leave," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Having you here moping around, it's embarrassing. I can't have you dragging us down with your failure." Jenna, who'd been silent in the corner, finally spoke. "Where is she supposed to go?" Patricia shrugged. "She's 34. She'll figure it out. She's good with logistics, isn't she? Always so proud of her little event planning business." She held out my phone charger like it was a gift. "Take this, as a kindness." I stood. My body moved, even though my heart had stopped hours ago. In the hall closet, I found my black wool coat. In the inside pocket, my fingers brushed something soft, the silk pocket square my father had given me when I started my business. Navy blue with tiny gold stars. "For luck," he'd said. "You'll need it out there." He hadn't said a word tonight. I clutched the fabric, not for warmth, but for proof that once maybe I'd mattered to someone in this house. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my bones. October in New Hampshire was already cold, the air sharp with the promise of early frost. I stood on the front step, wedding dress rustling against my coat suitcase, in one hand, and nowhere to go. Behind me, the living room TV continued its steady murmur. My parents had already moved on, settled back into their Sunday night routine, as if they hadn't just evicted their daughter on the worst day of her life. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even when I realized I had nowhere to go but my car. Some storms don't announce themselves with thunder. Sometimes they arrive in 5-word texts and the quiet click of a closing door, leaving you standing in the cold, wondering how you became a stranger in your own story. But I was about to learn. Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's the pause before you take back everything that was yours. The cold had settled deep into my bones by the time Jenna found me in my car, still parked in my parents' driveway, like I was waiting for someone to tell me it was all a mistake. She knocked on the window, her face a mix of concern and barely contained rage. "Get in my car," she said. "Now." I moved mechanically, transferring from one vehicle to another, dragging the suitcase with the broken zipper behind me. Jenna's apartment smelled like vanilla candles and coffee safe, normal things that felt foreign now. "The guest room's yours as long as you need it," she said, setting down a mug of tea I didn't remember asking for. "Ann Harper, we're going to figure this out." But first, I had to figure out how to breathe again. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat cross-legged on Jenna's guest bed, with my laptop open, staring at the spreadsheet I'd maintained for months. Every wedding expense meticulously tracked. The venue deposit, $8,500. Catering down payment, $3,200. Photographer, $2,500. Flowers, $1,800. All from my business account. All in my name. Nathan had insisted we keep finances separate until after the wedding. "It's cleaner that way," he'd said. Now I understood why. My phone lit up with notifications I didn't want to see. Family acquaintances already posting in the Millbrook Community Facebook group. Thoughts and prayers for the Winters family during this difficult time. Like I'd died instead of just been discarded. As dawn crept through the blinds, my fingers moved with sudden clarity. One by one, I logged into every vendor account. The florist, the caterer, the venue, the photographer, the DJ. All passwords I'd created, all contracts I'd signed. I didn't cancel anything. Not yet. I just quietly changed every password, removed Nathan's access, and updated the contact email to one my family didn't know about. Then I saw it. A charge on the joint wedding planning app from yesterday, $3,400 at La Rêve Bridal. Posted 3 hours after Nathan's text. My credit card. My account. My hands didn't shake anymore. By noon, I'd relocated to a small bed and breakfast on the outskirts of town. Anonymous. Quiet. The kind of place where no one asked questions about women who checked in with suitcases and swollen eyes. Jenna brought me clothes and information in equal measure. "You need to see this," she said, handing me her phone. A photo from the Millbrook Country Club's Instagram story. My parents, Nathan and my cousin Madison, all raising champagne glasses. Madison wore a cream-colored dress that caught the light like pearl. The caption, "Celebrating New Beginnings." "That was last night," Jenna said quietly. 3 hours after they kicked you out. The room spun, but I held steady. Madison, my younger cousin, who'd spent every holiday telling me how lucky I was to find someone like Nathan, who'd helped me pick out wedding favors just 2 weeks ago. Another notification popped up. The wedding photographer, Hi Harper, just confirming the timeline for Saturday. Also, I have a note here about updating the bride's name to Madison Winters. Just need your approval since you're the contract holder. I stared at the message until the words blurred. They weren't just moving on without me. They were literally writing me out of my own wedding. That's when something inside me shifted. The hurt crystallized into something harder, clearer. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Evidence. Screenshot, save. Screenshot, save. Every receipt, every contract, every payment confirmation from the last 8 months. The paper trail of a wedding I'd planned and paid for now being gifted to my cousin, like I was just a placeholder. My phone buzzed. "Patricia, don't make this harder than it needs to be. The family has decided to proceed with the celebration. Madison has graciously agreed to step in. Your presence would be uncomfortable." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the vendor portal for the venue and scheduled an email for Friday at 5 p.m. one day before the wedding. Subject line, verification of contract, holder required. They wanted my silence. They were going to get it. But silence, I was learning, could be a weapon too. The Millbrook Gazette ran a small announcement on Tuesday. Madison Winters to wed Nathan Crawford in Saturday ceremony. No mention of me. Like I'd been edited out of existence. But I kept working, quietly, methodically. I documented the dress charge, the one made on my card, after Nathan had already ended things. I saved every social media post where my family celebrated their revised plans. I collected screenshots of Madison trying on veils at the same shop where I'd stood just days ago. Wednesday brought the flowers. A text from the florist, Patricia Winters, called to confirm the bouquet changes. Since you're the account holder, I need your approval. She wants to swap the burgundy dahlias for white roses. Burgundy dahlias. I'd chosen them because they reminded me of the pocket square my father gave me, the one now folded carefully in my laptop bag, the only family heirloom I had left. I didn't approve the changes. I didn't deny them either. I simply responded. All modifications must be submitted in writing with contract holder signature. Let them figure that out. By Thursday, the cracks were starting to show. Nathan tried calling twice. I let it ring. Patricia sent 3 increasingly frustrated texts about logistics and cooperation for the family's sake. But the best part came Thursday evening. Jenna arrived with Chinese takeout and a smile I hadn't seen since Sunday. "You're going to want to see this," she said, pulling up a local Facebook group. Someone had posted a simple question. Wasn't Harper Winters supposed to get married this weekend? I saw her registry at Target, but now it's under a different name. The comments were starting to pile up. I thought that was strange too. Harper planned this whole wedding. She showed me the sketches at the library fundraiser. Wait, why is her cousin wearing white in those country club photos? Small-town curiosity. Sometimes it's better than any private investigator. I sat back against Jenna's couch, eating lo mein straight from the container. Outside October, rain tapped against the windows. In 48 hours, someone would walk down an aisle I'd chosen, surrounded by flowers I'd selected in front of guests I'd invited. But they'd forgotten one thing. It was still my show, and I was about to remind them that silence didn't mean surrender. It meant I was planning something they never saw coming. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp, autumn clarity that made everything look sharper, more defined. Like the world itself was taking sides. I woke before dawn, not from anxiety, but from purpose. Today was the day before the wedding, my wedding that wasn't mine anymore, and certain things needed to happen. At exactly 9 a.m., I walked into Bellefleur Flowers. Maria, the owner, looked up from her arrangements, her face cycling through recognition, surprise, and discomfort. "Harper," she said carefully. "I was just working on my order," I said quietly. "I know." She shifted behind the counter. "Your mother said." "My mother isn't the contract holder." I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying. "I am, and I never approved any changes." Maria's face paled slightly. She knew the law. She knew contracts. And she knew I could pull the entire order if I wanted to. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. I smiled. Not warm, not cold, just clear. Exactly what I paid for. Burgundy dahlias. Every single one. By noon, word had spread. The caterer called nervous. The venue coordinator sent 3 emails. The photographer asked for clarification. To each, I responded the same way. Please proceed with the original contract specifications. Then came the avalanche of family contact. Patricia called 6 times. I didn't answer. Robert sent his first text in 3 years. Stop being childish. But the one that made me pause was from Madison. A long, pleading message about how she'd always admired me and never meant for this to happen, but the family thought it was best, and couldn't I just be happy for them? I stared at her words for a long time. Then I took a screenshot and added it to my evidence folder. At 3 p.m., I did something unexpected. I went to the venue. The Riverside Manor sat on 10 acres of pristine New Hampshire countryside. I'd fallen in love with it the moment I saw it, the way the sunset hit the ballroom windows, turning everything golden. I'd put down the deposit the same day, imagining dancing with Nathan as the sun set over the mountains. The coordinator, Ellen, met me at the door. Her face was carefully neutral. "Ms. Winters, we've been trying to reach you about tomorrow's event." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here." She led me to her office, past the ballroom, where staff was already setting up. My centerpieces, my chosen linens, my vision coming to life for someone else. "There seems to be some confusion," Ellen began. I placed a manila envelope on her desk. "No confusion. Here's the original contract, my signature, my payment, my banking information. And here, I pulled out a second document, is a cease and desist letter from my attorney regarding any unauthorized use of my contracted services." Ellen's eyes widened. "Are you canceling the wedding?" "No," I said simply. "I'm clarifying ownership. If the event proceeds tomorrow, it proceeds under my name and my terms. Any other arrangement would require a new contract and full payment. Today." The silence stretched between us. We both knew what this meant. We both knew my family couldn't produce $8,500 by tomorrow morning. At 5 p.m., I sat in my car in the parking lot and watched my phone explode. The scheduled email had gone out to all vendors simultaneously. The subject line was simple: contract verification, required for tomorrow's event. Nathan finally broke his silence. A voicemail, his voice strained. "Harper, please. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Just call me back." But the best response came from Patricia. A text, all caps, "You will not ruin this family's reputation." I looked at it for a long moment. Then I typed back a single word, "watch." But I didn't send it. I deleted it, because silence, my silence, was saying everything I needed to say. That evening, Jenna helped me pack. Not for a honeymoon, but for something else. Something I'd been planning all week, while everyone thought I was broken. "You sure about tomorrow?" she asked. I folded the navy pocket square, carefully placing it in my bag. "I'm not going to the wedding," I said, "but I'll be there." She looked confused until I showed her the email confirmation on my phone. The Millbrook Gazette accepting my paid community announcement for Saturday's edition, right next to the wedding section. A personal thank you from Harper Winters to all the vendors who helped plan the Crawford Winters wedding this October 2nd. Your professionalism during this unusual situation has been remarkable. While I will not be attending the celebration I organized and funded, I want to publicly acknowledge your excellent work. Special recognition to Riverside Manor, $8,500 deposit. Bellefleur Flowers, $1,800. Taste of New England Catering, $3,200. Captured Moments. Photography, $2,500. Your contracts with me have been honored, even if my presence has not been. Simple, factual, devastating. As night fell, I stood at Jenna's window, looking out at the quiet street. Tomorrow, people would gather at a venue I'd chosen, eat food I'd selected, and celebrate a union that had been mine until it wasn't. But they'd also open their morning papers. They'd whisper, they'd wonder, and they'd know exactly who had paid for every single moment of joy they witnessed. My family wanted me to disappear quietly, to let them rewrite the story, without footnotes or attributions. They forgot that silence could speak louder than screams. They forgot that contracts were louder still. Tomorrow would be a wedding, but it would also be a reckoning. And I didn't need to say a word. Saturday, October the 2nd, dawned impossibly perfect. The kind of autumn day that made photographers weep with joy. Crystal blue skies, trees ablaze with color air, so crisp it felt like breathing starlight. I woke at 5 a.m., not from nerves, but from habit. This was supposed to be my wedding day. Instead, I made coffee in Jenna's kitchen and opened my laptop. The first email was from Ellen at Riverside Manor. Miss Winters, we need immediate clarification on today's event. The mother of the bride is insisting. I didn't finish reading. Instead, I forwarded the entire contract file to Ellen with a simple note. Please proceed according to the signed agreement. The contract holder will not be attending. By 7 a.m., the Millbrook Gazette had hit doorsteps across town. Jenna brought in her copy, trying not to smile. My announcement sat prominently on page 3, impossible to miss. The text started immediately. Aunt Linda Harper, what have you done? Cousin Marcus, is this some kind of joke? Unknown number. Probably a family friend. This is deeply inappropriate. I turned off my phone. At 10 a.m., while the bridal party was likely getting ready, I did something else. I drove to Riverside Manor, not to the main entrance, but to the service road that ran along the property. From there, I had a clear view of the venue's back terrace. I wasn't there to disrupt anything. I just needed to see. Workers scurried about setting final touches. The burgundy dahlias were everywhere, in the centerpieces, the ceremony arrangements even woven into the arch where vows would be exchanged. Maria had followed my instructions perfectly. Then I saw them. Madison in what was unmistakably the dress from that $3,400 charge on my card. My parents directing staff like they'd planned every detail. Nathan looking uncomfortable in his tux, kept checking his phone. A wedding photographer captured it all my photographer hired, with my deposit, documenting my vision being lived out by others. I took out my phone and snapped a single photo through my windshield. Not of them, but of the vendor trucks lined up in the parking lot. Each one representing a business I'd researched, vetted, and hired. Each one paid with money I'd earned. At noon, I did something that surprised even me. I drove to the small Episcopal church on Elm Street, not the venue, but the place where Nathan and I had planned to hold our rehearsal dinner. The reservation was still under my name. Father Thomas was in the garden, tending to the late roses. He looked up as I approached his kind face, creasing with concern. "Harper, I heard. I'm so sorry." "Thank you," I said. "I actually came to make a donation. The amount I would have spent on the rehearsal dinner. For the food pantry." He blinked surprised. That's very generous." I handed him the check. "One more thing. When people ask, and they will tell them the truth, that I kept my commitment, just redirected it." As I left, he called after me. "Harper, what you're doing, it takes grace." "No," I said, turning back. "It takes receipts." By 2 p.m., the ceremony would be starting. I was at a coffee shop 30 miles away, working on my laptop. Jenna had driven up to meet me, bringing sandwiches and solidarity. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it? No. Regrets mean you wish something had gone differently. I'm starting to think it went exactly how it needed to. My phone finally turned back on, showed 47 missed calls. But buried among them was something else, messages from people I hadn't expected. Mrs. Patterson, my high school English teacher, saw the paper. Always knew you had backbone. Tom from the flower shop, Maria told me what happened. Good for you. Even Ellen from the venue, carefully professional. Your attention to contractual detail is admirable. But the one that stopped me cold was from an unknown number. A screenshot from inside the reception. The burgundy dahlias were beautiful, the setup flawless. But in the corner of the image, I could see the wedding program, where my name should have been nothing, not even a mention, like I'd never existed at all, except for one small detail they'd missed. The napkins elegantly folded at each place. Setting still bore the monogram I'd chosen months ago, HWN, Harper Winters Nathan. They'd forgotten to change the napkins. Oh my God, Jenna breathed, looking at the photo. Everyone will see that. Everyone will know. And that's when I finally smiled. Really smiled. Because in their rush to erase me, they'd left breadcrumbs. 150 napkins, each one a small paper witness to the truth. At 4 p.m., as the reception would be in full swing, I posted a single photo on Instagram. Not of the wedding, not of the drama. Just me sitting in that coffee shop laptop, open working on a new project. The caption read, "Building something new." The navy heart emoji, the same color as my father's pocket square, was the only hint I gave. The comments flooded in immediately. Support questions, shock from people just learning what had happened. But I didn't respond to any of them, because I'd already said everything I needed to say, with contracts, with receipts, with the simple act of refusing to let them rewrite history completely. That night, while my replacement wedding played out to its conclusion, I sat with Jenna on her balcony, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars come out. You know what the best part is, I said. What? They got everything they wanted. The venue, the flowers, the photographer, the perfect day. But they'll never be able to forget that it was mine first. Every photo will remind them. Every memory will carry that weight. Jenna raised her wine glass. To the bride, who didn't show up, but somehow stole the show anyway. We clinked glasses as my phone buzzed with another notification I didn't check. Tomorrow, there would be fallout. Tonight, there was just peace. And the knowledge that sometimes the loudest statement you can make is refusing to scream at all. The aftermath came in waves. Sunday morning, I woke to find my story had traveled far beyond Millbrook. Someone, probably a wedding guest with a guilty conscience, had posted in a Reddit wedding shaming group. The title attended a wedding where the bride was literally the groom's ex-fiancé's cousin, wearing a dress charged to the ex's credit card. By noon, it had thousands of comments, screenshots of my newspaper announcement, photos of those damning monogrammed napkins. People had done the math on how much I'd spent expressed in increasingly creative terms of outrage. But I wasn't reading Reddit. I was reading emails from lawyers. The first came from the credit card company, confirming my fraud dispute for the dress purchase. The second, from a local attorney who'd seen the announcement and offered pro bono services for what appears to be a clear case of financial exploitation. Patricia's response was swift and predictable. A voicemail. Her voice, shrill. You've humiliated this family. Take down that announcement. Stop this vendetta immediately, or we'll sue for defamation. I forwarded it to the attorney. Monday brought Nathan to Jenna's door. She wouldn't let him in, conducting the entire conversation through the security chain. I need to explain, he said. Harper, please. This got so out of hand. Your mother said. Her mother said, what Jenna interrupted, that it was okay to ghost her 5 days before the wedding, that charging a dress to her credit card for another woman was fine. Madison and I, it just happened. We didn't mean. Get off my property, Jenna said flatly, and tell Madison she owes Harper $3,400 for the dress. Cash or check is fine. Tuesday was when the professional consequences began. Nathan's LinkedIn started showing views from his company's HR department. Madison's Instagram went private after someone tagged her employer in comments about ethics and character. But the real blow came Wednesday when Ellen from Riverside Manor called. Ms. Winters, I'm calling to inform you that the balance for Saturday's event remains unpaid. The partial deposit covered basic costs, but the remaining $11,000 is now past due. That's unfortunate, I said carefully, though I believe the mother of the bride assured you she would handle it. Ellen's silence was telling. She's not returning our calls. Well, as the contract holder, I'm happy to discuss this with my attorney. We'll need full documentation of all services provided, of course, for the fraud investigation. Fraud investigation. Oh, yes. It seems someone hosted an event under my contracts without my consent. My attorney is very interested in how that happened. Within hours, Patricia called. This time, I answered. $11,000, she hissed. You knew about this. I knew what my wedding cost, yes. Every penny of it. Just like I knew about the photographer's travel fee, the overtime charges for staff, and the premium flower upcharge for those white roses you insisted on. You have to pay it. Actually, I don't. See, I was prepared to pay for my wedding, not Madison's. That's a distinction I think a judge would find very interesting. The line went quiet. Then, what do you want? Nothing, I said simply. I want absolutely nothing from any of you. And I meant it. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Thursday afternoon, a message appeared on Facebook from someone I didn't recognize. Carol Hutchinson, whose profile showed a pleasant-looking woman in her 60s. Dear Harper, you don't know me, but I was at the wedding on Saturday. I'm James Crawford's, Aunt Nathan's great-aunt from Vermont. I wanted you to know that some of us were deeply uncomfortable with what transpired. The napkins were a dead giveaway, but even without them, anyone with eyes could see what had happened. I've known Nathan since he was born. What he did was cowardly and cruel. What your family did was worse, but what you did maintaining your dignity while ensuring they couldn't completely erase you was masterful. I've enclosed a photo I thought you should see. And please know, when I gave my wedding gift, I made the check out to Harper Winters. Let them figure out how to cash that. The attached photo showed the gift table at the reception. Dozens of elegantly wrapped presents and several envelopes clearly addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Crawford. But there in the middle, one envelope stood out, in bold letters, for Harper Winters, who paid for this celebration. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something shift in my chest. Not healing exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. Friday ended the week with a final twist. My father called. It was the first time I'd heard his voice since that night. He sounded older, tired. Harper, I waited. The bills are adding up, he said, finally. Your mother. She's in over her head with this. And nothing. I just thought you should know. Dad, I said before he could hang up, do you still have that navy pocket square? The one you gave me. A pause. Why would I have it? I gave it to you. Right. You gave it to me. Because it was mine. Just like everything else I paid for. Remember that when Mom asks you to help with the venue bill. I hung up first. That night, Jenna and I opened a bottle of good wine, the one I'd been saving for my honeymoon, and sat on her living room floor, surrounded by all the documentation I'd collected. What are you going to do with all of this? She asked. I looked at the pile. Contracts, receipts, screenshots, evidence of a betrayal so complete it still took my breath away sometimes. but also proof of my own strength, my own refusal to be erased. Frame the best ones, I said, only half joking, and then put the rest away. I don't need to carry this forever. And your family? I thought about it. They made their choice. They chose the appearance of a perfect wedding over their daughter. Now, they get to live with what that cost. Literally. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. This time, a text. Hi, Harper. This is Sarah from the Millbrook Gazette. We're doing a follow-up piece on vendor rights and contract law. Would you be willing to share your story? We can keep your name confidential if you prefer. I looked at Jenna. She shrugged. Your choice. You've been silent long enough. I typed back, I'll share my story, but use my name. I'm done being anonymous. Because that was the thing about silence. It was only powerful when you chose it. And I was ready to choose something else. Not revenge, not bitterness, just truth. And the truth was going to be expensive for everyone who tried to bury it. The Millbrook Gazette article ran on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't mine. Sarah the reporter had done her homework. The headline read, "When I Do Becomes I Don't. Local Woman's Story. Highlights contract law and family betrayal." It was factual, almost clinical in its presentation. My receipts, totaling $26,300. The timeline of events. Legal experts weighing in on contract law and financial fraud. But between the facts, my story bled through raw and undeniable. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Patricia's first move was predictable: a Facebook post about family matters being private and how disappointed she was that I'd chosen this path. Within hours, the comment section became a battlefield I didn't participate in, but couldn't help watching. Private. You threw a public wedding with someone else's money. I taught Harper in high school. This isn't the girl I know. What did you do to her? Madison should be ashamed. Who does that to family? By Wednesday, Madison had blocked me on all social media. Nathan's LinkedIn showed he'd moved to pursue new opportunities, corporate speak, for being asked to leave. Someone from his office messaged me privately. HR saw the article. Using company time to plan a wedding with one woman while engaged to another. Didn't go over well. But the real catastrophe came Thursday. Riverside Manor filed a civil suit against Patricia and Robert Winters for the outstanding $11,000. The venue had done their own investigation after my article discovering that Patricia had forged my signature on a change order form. Electronic forensics showed it was submitted from her IP address, not mine. Forgery, fraud, theft of services. The words looked different in legal documents than they did in family arguments. My attorney, no longer pro bono, after 3 firms reached out wanting to represent me, called with an update. They're looking at criminal charges for the forgery. The venue is pressing hard. And Harper, that dress charge is definitely fraud. Madison's going to have to pay you back or face her own charges. I don't want their money, I said. No, but you want justice. There's a difference. That evening, I did something I'd been putting off. I went back to my apartment, the one I'd shared with Nathan, where mail had been piling up for weeks. Jenna came with me, moral support in yoga pants and determination. The place felt like a museum of someone else's life. Wedding magazines on the coffee table, RSVPs on the fridge. The planning binder I'd maintained with obsessive detail tabs for every vendor, every detail, every dream. But there was something else. An envelope slipped under the door. No postage, hand-delivered. Inside a single sheet of paper in shaky handwriting I recognized immediately. My grandmother's. Dearest Harper, I am 87 years old, and I have seen enough of life to know when wrong has been done. What they did to you, my own son, my daughter-in-law, your cousin, it shames me. I was not at that wedding. I told them I was too ill to travel. The truth is, I could not watch them parade around in your life, wearing your dreams like costumes. Your grandfather left me some money when he passed. I've been saving it for something important. I think standing up to bullies and thieves qualifies. Call me. We have things to discuss. All my love. Grandma Rose. I sank onto the couch letter, trembling in my hands. In all the chaos, I'd forgotten about Grandma Rose, living quietly in her retirement community in Portland. She'd sent a gift for my engagement, a delicate gold bracelet that had been her mother's. I was still wearing it. I called her that night. "Took you long enough?" she said, by way of greeting. "Now, I've been talking to my lawyer. Yes, I have one. Don't sound so surprised. And we need to discuss strategy." "Grandma, I don't want—" "Hush. You don't want revenge. I know. You're better than they are. But you deserve restitution. And by God, you're going to get it. Besides," her voice turned shrewd, "I haven't updated my will in a while. Seems like some names need to be removed." The family explosion was immediate. Robert called within hours of Grandma Rose's lawyer, contacting them about estate planning changes. "You turned my mother against us," he raged. "No," I said calmly. "You did that when you threw me out in a wedding dress, when you celebrated my replacement, when you committed fraud in my name. I just told the truth. Grandma Rose made her own decisions. Family doesn't do this to each other." The irony was so thick, I almost choked on it. "You're right. They don't." I hung up. The next morning brought a surprise. A package delivered to Jenna's apartment, where I was still staying. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was my navy pocket square, the one piece of my father I'd kept. But underneath it, something else, a note in Patricia's handwriting. "Take your stupid inheritance and your grandmother's favor. Take your victim story and your newspaper fame. But know this, you'll always be alone. Who would want someone who turns on family?" I held the pocket square up to the light. It was pristine, like she'd kept it specifically to return as a final insult. But she'd miscalculated. Returning it didn't hurt me. It freed me, because now I had everything that was mine. My money being returned by court order, my story told on my terms, my self-respect hard-won but intact, and even this small piece of fabric that represented the last time my father had shown me kindness. That afternoon, I did two things. First, I called the reporter back. "Sarah, I want to do a follow-up piece about financial abuse in families, about how keeping the peace enables abusers. Use my name. Use my face. Maybe it'll help someone else see the red flags I missed." Second, I walked into a frame shop downtown and handed over 3 items, the original venue contract, with my signature, the newspaper article about my story, and the burgundy pocket square. "I want these displayed together," I told the framer. "It's a reminder of what he asked, curious, that survival sometimes looks like silence. But healing is loud." A month later, I sat in a courtroom in Concord, watching Madison tearfully write a check for $3,400. She couldn't look at me. Nathan sat 2 rows back, subpoenaed as a witness, but trying to remain invisible. Patricia and Robert were at the defendant's table, their lawyer arguing for reduced damages. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, was having none of it. "Let me understand," she said, peering over her glasses. "You used your daughter's contracts, credit cards, and vendor relationships to host a wedding for someone else, after evicting her from your home, and you're asking for leniency. The judgment was swift, full restitution, plus damages. $41,000 total to be paid within 90 days, or face criminal prosecution for fraud. As we left the courthouse, Patricia tried one last manipulation. "Harper, please. We're family." I stopped, turned, and looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in my life. She seemed smaller, somehow diminished by the loss of control. "No," I said simply. "We're not." And for the first time since Nathan's text, since that night in a wedding dress on their doorstep, since a lifetime of being told I wasn't enough, I meant it. Family isn't blood. It's not obligation or manipulation or keeping quiet to keep peace. Family is Jenna opening her home without question. It's Grandma Rose choosing justice over comfort. It's the strangers who read my story and said, "This isn't right." It's the people who see your worth, even when those closest to you are busy erasing it. That night, I signed a lease on a new apartment. Small, but mine. The first thing I hung was the frame from the shop contract article and pocket square, displayed like art, because they were art. The art of survival, the art of truth, the art of becoming whole, again one receipt at a time. Spring arrived in Millbrook 6 months later, carrying with it the kind of warmth that made people believe in fresh starts. I stood in my new apartment, a converted loft above the old textile mill, all exposed brick and large windows, arranging tulips in a vase. Yellow ones because I'd decided I was done with burgundy for a while. My business, which had nearly collapsed in the aftermath of October, was thriving. Turns out, being the wedding planner who sued her own family for fraud was excellent marketing for a very specific clientele, people who'd been burned before and wanted someone who understood contracts were sacred. "You're the one who won't let anyone screw me," over a recent bride had said, signing her contract. That's exactly what I need. The doorbell rang, an actual doorbell, because I'd finally moved somewhere that had one. Jenna stood outside with coffee and pastries from the new bakery. "Ready for this?" she asked. Today was the interview. Not another newspaper piece, but a podcast. Toxic Tables, a show about family dysfunction and financial abuse. They'd reached out after the court case made regional news. "Ready?" I said, though my hands shook slightly as I set up my laptop. The host, Dr. Marcus Chen, had a voice made for radio, warm but professional. "Harper, let's start with something that might surprise our listeners. You've said the silent treatment your family gave you after the lawsuit was actually a gift. Can you explain?" I thought about the last 6 months. No calls from Patricia, no guilt trips from Robert, no flying monkeys sent to convince me I was wrong. Just peace. When you grow up in a family that weaponizes communication love, that comes with strings, support, that demands silence about abuse, their absence feels like losing a limb at first. But then you realize that limb was infected. The silence they think is punishment. It's actually freedom. And your cousin Madison, the one who wore your dress, paid me back in full, moved to Arizona last I heard. We don't speak, and that's healthier for both of us. What about Nathan? I smiled, surprising myself. He taught me something valuable. When someone shows you who they are not through words, but through actions, believe them. He showed me he was someone who could plan a future with one woman while secretly building one with another. The text wasn't cruel. It was honest. The cruelty was everything that came after. Speaking of after, Dr. Chen said, "Let's talk about the legal precedent your case set." 3 other cases citing Winters. Dear. Winters have already gone to trial in New England. I thought about the emails I'd received. Adult children financially abused by parents. Siblings cheated out of inheritances. All finding courage in my story to say enough. The legal system isn't perfect, I said, but sometimes it's the only language abusers understand. When family becomes an excuse for theft, you need more than boundaries. You need legal ones. After the recording ended, I walked through downtown Millbrook. The cherry blossoms were blooming pink petals drifting like snow. I passed Bellefleur Flowers, where Maria waved from behind the counter. We'd become friends, bonding over contract law and customer service horror stories. My phone buzzed. Grandma Rose, texting with the enthusiasm of someone who discovered emojis. At 88, heard the podcast. Proud of you, P.S. Your father asked for money. I sent him a copy of the court judgment instead. I laughed, really laughed, standing there on Main Street. That's when I saw them, Patricia and Robert coming out of the bank. They saw me at the same moment. We all froze, suspended in this strange tableau of what was and what could never be again. Robert looked older, grayer. Patricia seemed diminished, her usual perfect presentation. Slightly off hair, unstyled clothes, wrinkled. The judgment had been paid, but at a cost. They'd had to sell their house, I'd heard. Downsized to a rental on the outskirts of town. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Patricia's face hardened, and she grabbed Robert's arm, pulling him away. But Robert hesitated. Our eyes met across the street. I saw it there. Not regret exactly, but recognition of what they'd lost. Not money or reputation, but a daughter who would have done anything for them, who had done everything for them, until they'd proven she meant nothing in return. I didn't wave, didn't speak, just nodded once and continued walking. 10 steps later, my phone rang. Unknown number, but local. Is this Harper Winters? The voice was young, nervous. Yes, my name is Ashley. I'm supposed to get married in June, but my parents are insisting on taking over, using my savings, bringing in their choices. I read your story. Could we maybe talk? Of course, I said, already pulling out my planner. How about coffee tomorrow? Because that was the thing about silence. Sometimes it was a weapon, sometimes a shield. But when you finally broke it, when you told your truth, it became a beacon for others finding their way out of the dark. As I walked home, the cherry blossoms continued to fall. I caught one in my palm, delicate, perfect, temporary, like the family I'd thought I had. But unlike that family, I didn't try to hold on. I let it go, watched it drift away on the spring breeze. My phone buzzed again. This time, a client confirming a cake tasting. Then, Jenna sending memes. Then, Grandma Rose mastering the art of voice texts. Real connections, chosen family. The life I'd built from the ashes of the one they'd burned down. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, the framed collection contract article pocket square, greeting me from the wall. My reminder of where I'd been, but no longer who I was. Because I wasn't the girl who got evicted in a wedding dress anymore. I wasn't the victim of a stolen wedding or family fraud. I was Harper Winters, business owner, survivor, truth teller. And my silence, when I chose it, how I wielded it, when I finally broke it, was mine, just like everything else they'd tried to take. Have you ever had to choose between keeping family peace and keeping your self-respect? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all until the right moment. I'd love to hear your thoughts below.